Welcome to Inside the Issues. Happy Monday. My name is Amrit Singh. We are now less than 2 weeks from President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline for so-called reciprocal tariffs, once known as the Liberation Day tariffs, against U.S. trading partners. The Wall Street Journal reports that the European Union is weighing countermeasures against the United States, saying that its negotiators had been aiming for a 10% levy, but that administration officials now say that figure could be higher. France and Germany, the two ends of the spectrum, things are moving from Germany, the dove, to France, the hawk. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick wanted to address the hawk and those trade talks this weekend on Face the Nation.
You should assume that the small countries, the Latin American countries, the Caribbean countries, many countries in Africa, they will have a baseline tariff of 10%. And then the bigger economies will either open themselves up or they'll pay a fair tariff to America for not opening themselves up.
The European Union amongst those larger economies, but take a look here at the Port of LA's numbers, because the tariff uncertainty is having a big impact at the Port of LA. Last month, the port had its highest and busiest June ever, with an 8% increase in container traffic from the same month last year. This spike illustrates the concept of what some people call front-loading. And take a look now live at the Port of LA, a very busy place of late. And when we talk about front-loading, we're talking about people trying to get ahead of potential deadlines, but that does create not just a whipsaw effect, but also lots of logistics to absorb. The port, an important driver of the local economy, and of course, hugely important when it comes to the entire country's imports. So it is great that we now have the executive director of the Port of LA, Gene Seroka, in studio to talk about all of that. Your beautiful port right there, Gene. Thanks for being right here with us.
Great to see you, Amrit, as always.
We're talking a lot about this whipsaw effect, and I was saying to you before the show, we kind of got you in a seesaw. We send you up and we send you down. And here we are now. We were talking about the July 9th deadline initially for the tariffs, and that inventory was going to go down. Now it went really high because of the delay. Talk about what we're seeing.
That's right. We've had more than 70 announcements on trade policy since January alone. Even the most seasoned professional is having a difficult time keeping up with this.
Yeah.
So hard trade policy goes into effect in April, little bit of a backstep, and you start to see cargo decline precipitously. Then tariff policy eases. Goal lines are extended, cargo picks up again. So in May, as an example, we were down 19% on imports month over month. In June, that number shoots up 34% for our best May ever.
Wow. And so now when we think about this, now you're looking at August coming down the pike. We're in July now. We know that August 1st is the deadline. And as we say, the idea of this, it's a concept of front loading, right? People are trying to bring in those goods before they have to pay the tariffs. That explains the whipsaw and the busyness.
Absolutely. And because those deadlines have been extended, we now have a fresh batch of cargo trying to make it in just under the wire with these August 1 deadlines. And please remember, China has an August 11th deadline. So you'll continue to see cargo coming in until that point, or we have some permanency to this trade policy that we're talking about.
Well, it's difficult to see that permanency on the horizon, because every time we get close to having a real deadline, there's a delay, and that is obviously the seesaw that we've been talking about. Just real quickly, from a logistics standpoint, it must be difficult to absorb that. I know that in June you were talking about the fact that opportunities for jobs at the port were down. Is that still the case, or as a result of the volume, does it go back up?
We've had a good 4 weeks running now with more normal volume of cargo, and those ILW dock workers have answered the bell every single time. But it was what got everybody nervous back in the second half of May, where for every 2 ILW members that went to the hiring hall looking for a job, 1 went home without one. Then the cargo picked up, and we're starting to see those jobs really, really build.
And there's all these other secondary and tertiary impacts of the volume at the ports. We know from the logistics and standpoint going to the warehouses and beyond. So it's a big economic driver as we talk about. You mentioned China being August 11th. August 1st is the deadline now for many of the other countries. And I just want to get a sense from you and let the folks know at home how much some of these countries they're hearing about actually impact the Port of LA's operations. So begin with the European Union, because as I mentioned earlier, there's some talk about a trade war really brewing, that the European Union is going to put one back on the United States. How much would that impact the operations there? Because it's not necessarily a direct contributor to the Port of LA EU.
Right. But we all like French wine, Italian clothes, German sports cars. All of those kind of products are going to be impacted. And this is a large trading bloc. And I think the knock-on effects of what the EU can negotiate will be felt by other individual countries that we trade with, and those that are yet to reach the negotiating table.
So we think about the knock-on effects. It makes me think about Vietnam, in part because it's a trade agreement, so there's now a 20% tariff, but there's also a 40% duty on transshipping, which is to say, as you say, sometimes some of the countries who avoid some of these tariffs go to Vietnam, and then it comes from Vietnam in. The United States said, we're going to figure that out, put 40% on that. Talk about the impact of the Port of LA of both those.
Right. But what's interesting about that is, and having worked in Asia for over 11 years, is you might have shirts that are made in Vietnam, but the button sets come from China. That's not circumventing tariffs or trade protocols. It's what we call piece goods going into the manufacture of a textile. Now, there may be some that are trying to get around the edges of tariffs, and that rule has got to be followed. But by and large, I don't think this is a deluge of product trying to skip the tariff regime, or better yet, position itself for these negotiations.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about some of what we heard with tariffs on Hollywood productions, not your area, but again, how do you portion out the different countries that are contributing to the end product? It becomes very, very difficult and tricky. Other Asian countries involved here as well. Japan, South Korea, 25%. There's Malaysia, anywhere between 24 and 32%. Cambodia, Bangladesh, all these countries involved. How much does that impact the Port of LA, what we're seeing?
A lot. I was just in Osaka, Japan a couple of weeks ago for large port meetings. 9 of our top 20 trading partners were there. And the conversations were a little uneasy, to say the least. And then in talking with Japan-based companies, they're making evaluations now of what best to do for their customers and their companies with these higher tariffs in sight and barriers that maybe won't get hurdled.
Another aspect of this is not just geographical, but sectoral. There's a 50% on copper. I believe that's August 1st. There's conversation about 200% on pharmaceuticals. How much is that for the Port of LA?
Now, what's going to happen here is that when tariffs go up in one sector, prices go up across the board. Use your example right now of Vietnam. They know exactly what the landed cost of a product coming out of China to the United States is. They're not going to leave too much of a premium there for their competitors. They're going to price to a point where it may be a little more advantageous, but they're not going to leave money on the table. Prices go up.
Move on from tariffs if I could, because we're always talking about them with you, but just a couple other outstanding items of business there for the Port of LA, including trying to go entirely green. Talked about where we are with this project to fully electrify it and go green and electric by 2030.
Yeah, I really like the momentum that we have right now. Last year, the Port of Long Beach, our neighbor, had their best year ever. Port of Los Angeles, second best, and our pollution was at the lowest since we began measuring 20 years ago. We really have the institutional knowledge, and now the technology is coming forward. More has to be developed on the infrastructure side. Think of how you would charge all these machines, and we've got to get the prices of the equipment to a more competitive level. But we've got a lot of people working with us right now, and I like the trajectory that we're on.
We love the conversations we have with Mario Cordero there from the Port of Long Beach. Now, you guys have a great relationship on this, but a lot of this does come down to, as you say, funding. We've heard about a lot with the infrastructure bills that passed under the Biden administration, different administration, and you and I have talked about this in the past, but do you feel like you can get the dollars you need to go through with this greening project? Because many aspects of what people have called the Green New Deal in D.C. have become non grata in Washington, D.C. now.
Yeah, it's going to take all of us, federal, state, local partners, as well as the private sector. I've seen nothing yet that says that money is not coming our way, but we've got to earn every dollar, as you would imagine, with the new administration.
And we think a lot about the infrastructure there, and all of this is relevant to the folks who live. We love to do a hyperlocal show. There's people who live near the ports they want to hear about. Is it going to get cleaner? Is my air going to get cleaner? Also, we talk about the Vincent St. Thomas Bridge. The construction, just give us an update on it and some of your ideas, because there's a conversation about its clearance and how much it'll mean to the logistics in terms of which kinds of ships you can get through.
The Vincent Thomas Bridge, state-owned, California Transportation Authority, needs to be redecked. Just like you'd fill a pothole on a surface street, this bridge needs to be in a state of good repair for the 54,000 vehicles that go across it every day. I'm saying that we may lose a little bit of that air draft, meaning the ships that go through today may be too big tomorrow after this resurfacing. Let's take a second look. Raise the bridge. The foundation of this bridge is good for another 75 years. We've got the private sector funding and engineering know-how in place. Now we just need to bring the state party together with us. We'll be on our way.
Well, I'm looking forward to having more of those conversations with you, because all these infrastructure projects are very interesting. Before I let you go, also, we're talking about the Olympics. A couple of events coming to the Port of LA. It's going to be a point of pride, and it's going to look good. I mean, we saw the port at the beginning of the conversation. It's going to look good with all these nations' flags there. Talk about the events. 6
sailing events in Los Angeles, and it will be close to the 100-year anniversary of us hosting the 1932 games and sailing off the Port of LA. A homecoming of sorts for us, and to showcase that redeveloped waterfront at West Harbor Harbor really is going to be a scene.
And you'll have your bearings with this. SailGP, you were telling me about the event that's been happening at the port, so you understand what you're doing. It's going to be great to see it coming. It's coming fast.
Absolutely.
As it's August 1st, as it's so much more, so we know much more to talk about, but we really appreciate you coming and having these conversations with us, Gene. Great to see you.
Thank you, Amrit, as always.
Thank you so much. The Port of LA Director Gene Seroka talking a lot about what's coming down the pike with August 1st and August 11th with some of these tariffs on all these other countries. The trade wars, so to speak, but also the Olympics comes to the port and to a television near you. More coming up on ITI. Stay with us.